Imagine this. If you have big time resistance to vancomycin, then practically have no other drug to take care of that problem. So again, I used to tell my class, in fact I still do, bacteria are very promiscuous. What I mean by that is they acquire new genetics that allow them to do things you never really expected. Actually, we should expect it now. Antibiotics is top of the list. So at some point, we're going to run out of antibiotics practically for everything. That's where drug design comes into play, and rather than using natural chemicals, but that's a huge problem. Climate change also affect, say for example, vectors that weren't in a certain area before. Now they're there and they can transmit diseases. For example, mosquitoes. What we're finding out now is that certain species of mosquitoes are found where they weren't found before, and even in higher altitude areas. But mosquitoes transmit a whole ton of diseases to humans, again, mainly viruses and parasites, right? So again, this is a challenge for us. And of course, bioterrorism. I kind of mentioned to you anthrax. That's a huge problem. We still have idiots on the planet who would do things like this, and that's what they intend to do. And sometimes you can't stop them. So far, we really haven't had much of a threat on this issue. But let me just say, it's easy to make these weapons. For example, anthrax, all right? I mentioned smallpox. We don't have to deal with smallpox anymore. Humanity has gotten rid of them. I'll tell you why when we talk about virology later on. But the last cases we saw was back in 1978, 79. By 1981, basically, we never saw any cases of smallpox anymore. But here's what governments did. They kept little vials of that pathogen. And when the Soviet Union broke up, you probably don't hear that term Soviet Union because you're so young, you age me, all right? But nonetheless, when the Soviet Union broke up, many of those vials went missing. So yes, somebody has them, hopefully not, but somebody might have them, and they can be actually grown and used as a bioterrorist weapon. So those are the issues that we deal with in this day and time, right? So we're pretty much done. Other things that we worry about that doesn't really concern us too much, bioremediation. We can use microorganisms to clean up our toxic mess. And again, that's more of an environmental issue. All right, guys, I'm done with the lecture today. Hopefully you get a good sense of where we were even 110 years ago. Think about that. That's not too far away. We have people who are living 100. In other words, they see all this history. That's incredible. We know a lot about microorganisms. We've learned a lot in a very short period of time. We've used Koch's postulates to actually identify that correlation. Here's that microorganism, here's the disease, here's the symptom. All right? So, hopefully you have a nice little introduction to the historical perspective that led us to this point here. All right, so I'm going to shut up. And like I promised before, I'm going to leave it about 10 minutes or so you can ask questions on anything, the lecture included, or any other thing about the class. We're not going to have a quiz on Monday. I want to give one more lecture, and I'm going to schedule a quiz next Wednesday, but I'll let you know on Monday. All right, questions?
Dr. Videshi?
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the lecture today, you were noting that there is a difference between infection and disease.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, in regards to COVID-19, would that be considered both an infection and a disease?
Yes. That's a good observation. That's a great example, Bob. So let's take a look at the numbers. Last time I looked, it was last week sometime, we had over 5 million people in the United States who were infected, right? Doesn't mean to say they have disease. When we know they're infected, you take blood from them, and of course, generally, people have an immune system, and most of us do. You produce antibodies to the pathogen. So what they're screening is the presence of antibodies against the virus that COVID-19 is a disease. The virus that causes COVID-19 is SARS, S-A-R-S, severe acute respiratory syndrome, CoV-2, coronavirus 2. All right. Doesn't mean to say have the disease. So, of course, you're going to have way more infections than disease that you see. Disease is when, in this case, the SARS virus takes over the cell and suppresses the immune system because something called a huge inflammatory response. All right, it's really a shock, a cytokine storm, as it's called, to produce that disease that we call COVID-19. Are we good?
Thank you.
All right.
A question.
Yeah, go for it.
So, is there going to be a lab quiz on next week's lab?
No, so the first, actually, the instructor should tell you this, and if they haven't, because each lab is independent, right? I oversee the labs, I tell them what to do, but we had the first meeting today, and again, it was on safety, and if you attended lab already, we kind of introduced you to the lab for next week. Now, we try to have a quiz every week to keep you on your toes. In other words, you keep reviewing the materials, because you don't want to have a practicum, then you have to study all this stuff brand new. So, I'm going to communicate with my instructors if they do decide to give a quiz next week, that they email you and tell you, hey guys, we talked about CFT, we talked about Ramstein or whatever, this will be on the quiz next week. And quizzes are meant to be very simple, straightforward. If you study them, it doesn't require much thought because at least rapid recall, even for the quiz that we have here for the lecture. So I'll remind them. In case they didn't mention that to you, be sure to tell your students when you're going to give them quizzes and practicum. So I'll let them know this week. Look out for an email to Blackboard if a quiz will be implemented, all right?
Okay, and somebody's trying to ask if your camera has to be on for participation.
No, I saw that email before. So before I just started the lecture here, no, as long as you log on, basically WebEx literally tracks. So you don't have to have your camera, but it tracks the time that you log in and the time that you logged out. So some people, they go back and forth, I get that. But it does say, here's your name, and this is that person actually entered it. Let's just say 2:30 or whatever, and this is the time or the length of time that person stayed for the meeting. So all that stuff is tracked. We don't see videos. So I know some people are concerned about, privacy and all that stuff. I get that. No, I don't look at your... it's not required that you have your video. If you want to ask a question, and basically in a small format, where we have breakout rooms, which is not going to work for a class like this because we have close to 100 students, then you can have your video on so people can see you. But generally, people have their videos on because I do see your faces on the screen. All right?
Okay, so just to make sure about the lab quiz, we just have to look out for like RTAs emailing us if there is going to be a lab quiz.
Right. Okay. Just in case they didn't mention that to you today, and if they are going to give you a quiz, I want them to tell you, man, this is something I'm very concerned about. Because I want you to be prepared for everything you have, all the exams and quizzes that you will get over the course of the semester. So if they haven't and they do plan to give you a quiz next week, I would say make sure you email your students and say, hey guys, you're responsible for the stuff that we covered this week, which is all dry labs. All right?
Okay.
So I'll make sure that's done. In fact, let me write that down because I am getting old and I need to get things right.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions?
If my instructor already told my class that we are going to have a quiz on Tuesday, do I count on that then?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
So we have planned every week you have a quiz, small amount of points, but yeah. So quizzes, again, they're meant to be very simple and straightforward. It shouldn't take you a long time to get through them. All right? But yeah, if your instructor said you have a quiz, yeah, go for it.
So my instructor said that we are going to have a quiz, but she just wasn't sure what it's going to be over, if it's just like safety and the microscope, or it's also about morphology.
Yeah.
So will you specify that, or?
Yeah, so basically the PowerPoints that I provide, it takes about it covers about 9 chapters in your lab manual, right? We consolidate them. So instead of going to your lab manual, you should do this. Look at all the exercises that you're going to be doing next week. Everything's condensed in those slides. It's like Ramstein, for example. Even maybe some things about safety, mask and all that stuff. Yeah, that's fair game.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I'll be sure to tell them, you only quiz students on what you presented. That's very important. In other words, you shouldn't be guessing. So if they did the presentation using the PowerPoints I provided, that's what's going to be on the quiz and nothing else. You might be asked to actually deduce things from the materials they presented. So in other words, it's something that you have to think about for a few seconds to come across an answer, but it's not going to be something that you haven't talked about at all.
Okay, because I think on the syllabus, the quiz said that it was just over the microscope, but we learned about the bacteria and everything too. So we just weren't sure which part to study or.
All right, so I'll address that in an email to the instructor to be very specific. But generally, it's what you cover in that lecture.
Okay.
All right. Other questions?
For the quiz that's gonna be on Wednesday next week, is
For
it
lecture or lab?
for lecture?
Okay, yeah.
Is it gonna consist of this lecture you just did right now and the one on Mondays?
Yeah. So basically, with this lecture, it's been very straightforward, hopefully. What I cared, the most important about this lecture is simply this. Here's some names of individuals, and I have them in red. And this is the major contribution. Let me give you an example. If I say to you Alexander Fleming, I know you have to go study it, right? But the only thing I want you to know about that individual, he actually discovered the mold that produces penicillin. If I say to you Edward Jenner, what I'll do, he's the father of vaccination. If I say to you Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, right, he's the one who discovered the microbial world. So there's nothing detailed other than just that little fact about those individuals, right? Okay, good. Other questions?
I was looking for the PowerPoints on Blackboard for lecture, and I haven't been able to find them. I was looking underneath week 1, week 2, and they were empty. Am I missing them?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in class on Monday, if you go to the Blackboard site, you're going to see two things. One is a combined lecture where everything's posted, so I don't have to do this independently for the 3 different classes because it's the same class. So I post all the materials on one area. All right, that's where you get your PowerPoints from. Then your individual sections, so this is section A, right? When I give quizzes and exams, that's the Blackboard page you want to get into. So one is to distribute everything to everyone enrolled in the 3 different lectures because it's the same material. But when you take your exams and your quizzes, it's going to be specific Bio 205. I think the section is A. Are we good?
Oh, sorry, maybe I didn't understand. So the PowerPoints are on a different Blackboard?
No, it's on the same Blackboard. You should see two 205 classes. One is a combined. You have all the sections combined. So we have A, B, and E. So all the materials, because it's the same material, get dumped into that folder. And in your class, which is section A, right? When we take quizzes and exams, it's going to be to your specific section. So section E would take in their own section, section A would take in their own section, and section B would take in their own section. But you all get the same materials from the same common site.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Are you recording your lectures?
Yeah, I am. They're only available if you request them, and typically you have to go to DSS. Hopefully, the reason why we try to do synchronous, we want you guys to be here. All right? So that's a major thing. Other questions? All right, guys. Was there a question?
Yes. I do have a lab tomorrow morning with for this specific class. Is there any for as soon as we get to the campus? Is there any location that we're supposed to go to?
Okay. So is this your first time on campus?
Yes.
All right. So you come to the gate. There's a kiosk. You just drive through. They're going to ask you. There's something you're supposed to download on your phone to show that you don't have any signs of COVID-19. So if you go through, so this is on Magnolia, you enter the campus, there's a kiosk there. They're going to stop you and you just show them your phone. You just plug in, you have no symptoms, and they're going to let you in. You can even ask them where James West is. So as you drive into campus, the very first building you see, it's really it's called the Yeager Center. We're just right across from the Yeager Center, north. All right. So it's called James. So there are 2 buildings that's called James. One is a 4-story building. That's not the one you want to go to. It's the one behind. In fact, it's going to be in front of us. It's directly in front of the playground. There's a huge playground here. If you ever been to Calbax before, it's a huge field. You can see it right on Magnolia. The laboratory actually faces that field. All right.
For Monday's lecture, what chapter or slides are you gonna go over?
It's gonna be 4.3. So this is it's gonna be chapter 3. All right. So we just got to chapter 1. The next chapter we're gonna attack is chapter 3. We skip chapter 2 because that's molecules. You get molecules in practically every class we take here. So I'm not going to test you on molecules.